Do you ever read any Joseph Campbell?
The name sounds familiar.
Joseph Campbell. He didn't so much as create a philosophy, but his genius was in compiling a mythic history of humanity. Basically, he would study all of the myths of the world, and he found that there's the common thread that they're basically telling the same story.
Yeah, I now that you say that, I think yeah.
And he that they all, including what we consider religions, they become religions because we adhere to them in a social sense, but they're really just like all of the myths of the world. And a religion is supposed to take the unknown and make it known.
Yeah.
Because the unknown is something that a human mind can't deal with.
Yeah.
And the main problem of our society is that our myth is 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
And in a language that we really don't understand. So if you adhere to a Christianity, the Christian dogma, the whole world flooded. It did. The whole thing. But science will tell us, like, where's the water?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it didn't flood. Metaphorically, that meant something to someone. It doesn't to us anymore.
Yeah.
The idea of a person rising from the dead has never happened. We know that. But that's, again, a metaphor. So people who are still hungry for the ability to sleep well, or to not have panic attacks, just accept things on the concrete level of, like, this actually happened. Or the other side is like, this is asinine. How could you possibly believe in this? When in reality, it's a metaphor. And if you were able to speak the metaphorical language, it might resonate with you. And it does in some ways when you look at it in a metaphorical sense, a flood, starting over, being reborn.
Yep.
Those things make sense. But that's not taught. That's not how it's taught these days. It's taught about this stuff historically happened. And it takes the whole religious aspect out of it. There's a Latin phrase called the mysterium tremendum, the tremendous mystery. And that's what it's supposed to align your head with, give you something that lets you at least touch something that is untouchable, kind of grasp something that's ungraspable, and allow you to relax and enjoy your time here. Yeah. So, but the world's religions don't do that right now.
They don't, and there's a kind of a void that it leaves because people relied on that for so long. I mean, 2,000 years, and now we're in an age, technologically and intellectually, that more and more people, even the people that believe, are like, okay, I still believe, but I don't believe in the Bible.
One of the things that Joseph Campbell talked about in one of his books is, he said it was remarkable. He was watching one of the Apollo astronauts go. They were circling the moon. They were about to land, and it was Christmas Eve. And one of them read from the book of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Well, when Genesis was written, God was literally in the clouds. Yeah. And they were way past where heaven was considered to be when Genesis was written, but we're still reading from that book. We're literally looking down and going, we got up here and there's no God here. Yeah. But we're still going to read from this book because that's supposed to inform us somehow.
Yeah. What is it? The God of the gaps?
Well, I don't know.
You heard so the God of the gaps is any point that we reach, scientifically that disproves a certain idea that we had about God, it gets pushed back. It fills in the gaps for the things that we don't know until it gets proven that it's not. So back then, God was in the clouds.
Well, just keep moving higher.
Keep moving back. Yeah. So it's in the gaps of our uncertainty or the things that we don't know. And it just keeps.
And the earth was the center of the universe.
Yeah. Or I think, what was it, like Plato or Aristotle in his day, like angels literally moved the stars into earth. Like it was like a crystal, like a class. I forget what, some fucking philosophy class. But yeah.
And all of our science will be disproved too someday. But
or at least, we're going to discover things that were completely unthinkable to us now. So and it leaves a void because people don't know what to believe. They don't know what to put in place of that now. They don't know what to do to be happy because they've been told that this very particular structure is the key to being happy. And now they realize, well, that structure is pretty much bullshit. And everybody who practices it, not everybody, I'm not going to say that, but the church.
You can't blame someone for adhering.
Yeah.
Because it's a basic fundamental need. You will go insane.
There's a book that I just read called Happy, Why More or Less Everything is Perfectly Fine, something like that, by a guy named Derek Brown. He's a mentalist. And, he studies psychology. He's an illusionist. And, his job is to get into people's heads. And he's also an atheist. And he looked at, the ancient kind of like religious ideas and Stoicism. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of got more interested into it, or more interested in Stoicism, and how they could apply today, or what parts could apply today. But he said that because religion is failing a lot of people, we see certain patterns in our society now, like celebrities gaining this cult-like status, like the Kardashians and stuff like that, or politicians getting this kind of like, again, cult-like status. People almost worship them, because they're supposed to represent these ideas of things that they might not have. Like the Kardashians are rich and wealthy, and people have always idolized celebrity, but now it almost seems like it's getting crazy, like with how, like, what was the one Kardashian who, she's going to be potentially the youngest billionaire or something, but she didn't quite meet it. So people started a GoFundMe page to donate money to her.
Kylie.
Yeah. Kylie, was it Kylie? Kylie Jenner.
Donated money to her because she didn't make.
Yeah. Didn't quite make
the
billionaire.
Youngest billionaire.
Yeah. So they were just giving money to this person. Yeah. So, I mean, people kind of like.
I stay out of that world. I try to. I mean, it's unavoidable, but like, that's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, that is literally idolatry.
Yeah, exactly. And it's because they don't have, they see someone who's young and successful and has all these things, and they think that that's what they're supposed to have, and they kind of try to live vicariously through them. So they support them, just like a sports team. The sports team is winning and they're doing all these great things, and them and their lives, essentially are losing. They're not doing anything, quote unquote, great. So they live through these things. Same thing with politicians now, like the whole Trump phenomenon, which I'm sure we will talk in depth on later on. But yeah, they need something to fill this void. And, this void was made because they were told that there are very specific things that you need to be happy. Those things aren't working. So now they got to fill them with something else. And it's kind of more of the same, So instead of religion, they look at celebrities, and when a celebrity does well or their favorite rich person gets richer, they're happy for them. It's a really weird phenomenon. So
it's cultish, and the same thing happens with sports figures, and it's the same thing happened with the rise of Trump as well too, and it's perception too. Like there's so many people saying he's not rich, he doesn't have any money left. Like he blew his whole, and he's beholden to the Russians because he's got tons of loans through them, but he has the perception of like a guy who comes along and says, I know how to do it. I figured it out, and just hire me. And
people are attracted to that because they feel like he has some answer. Look into Alan Watts, because he talks like he was. He died in the 70s. He was I'll say an Eastern philosopher. His mix, or his personal philosophy, was a mix of Zen, Hinduism, and Taoism, and he was part of the counterculture movement. Like with Jack Kerouac and like all these other people back in the day. And he really, like, I hate to say he was ahead of his time because that gets so overused, but.
Well, there are certain figures that don't stick out in a notoriety sense.
Yeah.
Like everybody knows Ginsberg and everybody knows Kerouac, but like you drop a name like that. And those are usually like I'm a guitar player, and nobody really talks about Jeff Beck a lot because he's a guitar player's guitar player. Yeah. But he's the guy, like every guitar player gives you the wink. He's like, yeah, Jeff Beck's amazing,
So yeah, he really a lot of the issues that we're having now, he addressed in some form, because a lot of them were beginning around that time. Like he talked about environmental issues. He talked about how people would idolize certain figures, and that's causing kind of an imbalance between the rich and the poor, and the powerful and the not powerful. It's just really interesting stuff. I mean, his lectures are all over YouTube. I've listened to just about every single one, like hundreds of hours. I've got at least 5, 6, 7 books by him. I mean, really, really cool stuff. And
informed your thinking, huh?
Yeah. And he has a great way of taking these really complex ideas and just putting them into easy to understand terms. You know, he talks about human interaction and, you know, the ideas about the universe and stuff like this, and just is able to just condense it down to just like this, you know, and he's got an awesome accent. Like everything that comes out of his mouth, he just want to eat. It's just like, like, yeah, you can just listen to him talk. You don't even have to listen. You don't actually have to pay attention to what he's saying. It's just his voice is so soothing. You're just like, all right, you know?
Yeah.
So
I got a voice thing.
What was that?
I have a voice thing.
Yeah.
It's been like with like girls too. Like
Yeah.
mostly girls, but like my wife thinks it's funny. I'm like, you heard her? I like that voice.
Yeah.
Voice? What are you talking about? She's got a sexy voice. But I understand like getting like enamored with the sound of someone. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a very, very distinct character to the way he speaks. And yeah. So he really helped me a lot through my anxiety episodes. And it's one of those things that people kind of love him or hate him because he's really good at sound bites. Like he's really good at quotes. He's got a lot of great quotes out there. And if you take them for face value, they just kind of sound like new age, watered down hippie bullshit that just has no real substance, you know? But when you read the stuff that he's written or listen to the whole lecture that quote came out of, you know that he knows what he's talking about. You know, I'm not going to say he was the be all end all authority on Zen or Taoism or Hinduism, but he knew what he was talking about, you know, and he never tried to claim that he was. He called himself like a player, like a spiritual player, you know, like I don't want to say a trickster, but an entertainer kind of, you know, a spiritual entertainer that, you know, so he would throw these ideas out here, many of which he might not have believed himself personally, but it just got you thinking about different things or in different ways. And, you know,
He wasn't a comedian though, was he?
No,
Oh, okay.
no. Just
Because a lot of comedians are like that.
no, he just that's how he made his money. He just talked philosophy, you know, talked about everything, you know. So yeah, really, really good. So if I haven't plugged Alan Watts enough, check him out.
Well, that's verse number 1 of the Tao, is that the Tao that you can name is not the Tao.
Not the true Tao. Yeah.
My fallout with my Christian upbringing came earlier. It was about 12 or 13. And it just started, it was a slow one. It wasn't immediate. I mean, I can imagine if everything fell on my brain at one time, I'd probably fall into a panicky hole too.
Yeah.
But it was a slow one. It evolved pretty naturally, but just started to kind of conceptualize forever. And basically couldn't imagine a God that just pitchforked 3/4 of the world into hell for no reason at all, for just not believing something. And how is that even possible? You know, that some people would never hear about Jesus are not going to get a chance to go to heaven.
I think what is
And is that the end? Like, is that it? Really, just
Yeah.
like one to go around and like that's it, just to go to heaven for the rest of all eternity? Like,
yeah. It's interesting trying to get into these kind of conversations with people because, you know, when you talk about like that, like all eternity, like what does that mean? You're in heaven and this, that, and the other. To play devil's advocate, because there's some people who are for or against that kind of idea, right? So you're like people who believe in heaven, you know, they don't see anything wrong with it. People who think differently might say, well, that doesn't even make sense. What does that even mean? But I think on a mystical level, and I don't believe in God. I mean, I'm not going to put it out there that there could be a possibility, or I'm not going to deny that there could be a possibility. But when you look at those kind of supernatural things, it's really impossible to even try to theorize or talk about because, you know, yeah, you could say, oh yeah, heaven exists and it means that. And you could say that it doesn't exist. But in reality, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You know, so when people say that, like, when they say, well, do you really want to spend all eternity with your family? We don't even know what that would actually be like because that's on such a level that we can't even.
What is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it like this sitting in your living room?
Exactly.
This ain't heaven.
Yeah, so it's weird.
And most of the people who get to go to heaven, I don't want to hang out with them. Like, forever?
Yeah, forever. Or the idea of the saint or the people that are supposed to go to heaven. You know, like Alan Watts again, he talks about, he's like, heaven will be a drag because it's all these uptight people. You know,
They didn't do shit in their lives.
Yeah.
They're just angry. They're bitter.
Yeah, angry and bitter, and singing religious nursery rhymes until the end of time. So it's
And that's
just
heaven?
yeah,
Wait.
yeah. So it's yeah. So even to like,
But so I went through a period of not panic, but anger.
mm-hmm.
Thinking that the first 15 years of my life was a lie.
Yeah, you were lied to. That's the
Yeah.
biggest, like a lot of atheists. I don't know if you're atheist now, but that's what they say. Like the first thing's anger because they felt like they've been lied to this whole time.
And excuse me, Joseph Campbell was the one who made me realize that I hated someone else's interpretation of God, not God.
Yeah,
Someone else's interpretation.
yeah,
And that gave me a peace and gave me also an ability to go forward, not thinking that life was A or B, but it's some other letter that doesn't exist in the alphabet for me right now. I have to learn another language or write my own, decipher my own. But I spent a lot of time very angry, just long black hair, black fingernails, 18-year-old industrial rock kid.
yeah. I hung out with the goths at my high school too,
Oh, yeah.
which was a very small group.
In the
because
periphery, or were you one of them?
I was with. I mean, I
Because
would.
my wife was like, she had some combat boots, but
Yeah.
she hung out with them.
So it's the thing. Like I never got into like the style.
Yeah.
I mean, I wore black, but we also had uniforms.
Or were you black in here on the inside?
Yeah,
Right
on the
here?
inside. Yeah. So, and I went to concerts. Yeah.